So guys, as you can see, the doors are working and they essentially just spawn a random level directly after the previous level every single time. And I can just keep going and they will keep spawning. Here I have these various levels that kind of look like a layout for a doors map. And the way you want procedural generation to work, you want these levels to maybe be generated as the game is running. I've sorted these levels into folders, by the way, as you can see in the workspace. So let's say I had this level. And when the player opened this door right here, a new level would spawn, and it would spawn right here. But we wouldn't want the same level to spawn every single time. So we would probably want some level out of these to spawn randomly. And that's basically the system that we need to implement. So what we need to do, first, we need to implement some sort of system that picks a level by random, right? And then second, we need to actually clone that system and then place it wherever we need to place it. And then third, conduct that system when the player actually opens the gate or opens the door, or you can fully populate the levels whenever the game starts. It's completely your choice. So let's get started, all right? The first level that we have here is just the lobby level. So I recommend keeping the lobby level consistent. If you don't want to do that, that's completely fine, but that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. So I have a folder here called levels, and it's in the workspace. And these levels will contain other folders. And then these folders will basically just be each level. So this is level 0, and this is level 1. And they have to be in the exact order that they are actually placed. And the order will be dictated by their name. So here's the thing. Level 0 is just going to be the lobby, so where the player spawns. So I don't want these three levels to actually be in the game when the game starts because, as I said, we're going to procedurally generate them. So what I'm going to do here, right, is I'm going to add these three levels. First, let me create a folder um there, and I'll call this levels storage. And then the reason I'm putting in server storage is because I'm actually going to store these levels later to be kind of like cloned and replicated. Now, I don't really want them to be accessible by the client because, it's whatever. And I'm going to be adding these levels to this level storage. And the names themselves in the level storage doesn't matter. But what our code is going to be doing is it's going to be procedurally cloning these folders and then moving them to their respective locations and then adding them to this levels folder in the workspace. So let's go ahead and create a script to actually start coding because that's what you're here for. So the first thing that we actually need to do is to create our references to our services. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some references and variables to our workspace, and I'm also going to create a variable to our server storage by using the get service method on the game. The next thing I want to do is create a reference to the folders that we have here. So I'm pretty much just going to use wait for child because why not? And I'm going to use it on the respective services. So the two folders that I need are level storage and levels. So this is how it should look so far. Now let's generate some code to randomly clone a level from level storage to levels. So first I'm going to create a function to actually do this. And I'm going to call choose random level. And we're not going to call this function yet. We're going to call it later on. So this choose random level function is pretty much, we don't really need any arguments for now. I don't think we're gonna be needing anything. But we're going to be using the math library, and in specific, we're going to be using the random function of the math library in order to do this. So first, we need to actually get the children of levels storage. And why, you may ask? Well, the levels are all children, so we need to randomly select a child from this folder. So let's just do that. And this time, I'll just call it uh, all level, or I'll just call it level templates. Um, and I'll do level storage, and I'll use the get children method like that. So now in order to get a random level from here, I can set it equal to a variable called, let's just do random level. And since I'm using the math.random library, let me explain how it works. So it takes in two arguments. The first one is the smaller number within the range, and the second one is the bigger number. So if I wanted to choose 0 to 100, then I would do this. If I wanted to do 0 to 200, I would do this. 1 to 200, I would do this. So basically, we can use the mat.random function to generate a random number, and assuming that these level folders are named after numbers, we can use this randomly generated number to actually get the child. So first of all, let's call level templates, and then let's index it using some brackets. And the index will depend on this math.random. The lowest it could be is 1. And then the highest it could be, here's the thing. If we added another level and called it 4, I wouldn't want to manually change this whenever I added a new level, right? So if I deleted this level, and then I would have to go back into this code every time and delete this number. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to get the size of the level templates array, which will allow us to get the maximum level number. And then maybe instead of using brackets, what we can do, we can just do like levels storage and then find first child, and we can put this in like a 2 string or something. So basically this just gets a random level. Now I'm just going to return a clone of this random level, and I'm going to use the clone method on it. And whenever we call this function, it will choose a random level from here and then clone it. So now let me explain how to actually move a level to the workspace and pivot it to the exact position of where we need to, like this. So here you can see this is level 1. And here you can see that this level 1 doesn't have a wall, but this level 0 does. And here there is a wall as well. But if I were to put in level 2 into the workspace as well and kind of move it, you would also see that it doesn't start with a wall, but it ends with one. And the reason is because the wall on the previous stage, right? Whenever we clone a stage and add it, the wall from the previous stage will kind of be the wall for the next stage. That's how we want it to work. So you can kind of see that we need a system for these walls to kind of be connected in a very specific position. But no matter like the position that the level is in, like, so like even if it was all the way over here, I would want it to still be like connected like so. Basically what we can do is we can actually use parts. That's it. We can use parts like these things right here. And what we can do is we can actually position these parts in a very specific way, so that if I were to put a part exactly under this door right here, under this wall, where the level ends, and then another part exactly where this level starts, we can use these parts to kind of anchor their positions like so, like almost like they're kind of synced up, as you can see. So this one's not completely synced up because of the walls here, but what I recommend you do is kind of just sync up the parts. So I'm going to move this over a little bit, and you can also make these parts completely transparent. It really doesn't matter. So now when I sync it up by kind of like putting the wall here, and I go back to this part that we created, you can see I'm selecting both of these parts, and they are both lined up like so. So now what we need to do is actually like use these parts to our advantage, right? So what we're gonna do for each level, we're gonna have 2 parts, and we're gonna put these parts in their respective folders. And then what I'm gonna do with this part over here is I'm gonna call it start part, and I'm just gonna put it inside its respective folder. And then we need parts on either side, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put another part, but this one I'm gonna call it end part. So every single folder, every single level will have this, and obviously this is my workspace copy. So I'm gonna go ahead and delete the clone copy, and I'm gonna add this back to there. So now we would need to kind of like add a part to every single level. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that off camera real quick. Okay, guys. So I just realized something, right? That I should probably explain. You need to orient the part exactly how the levels should generate, right? So let's say I put the part like this, and you're wondering why it won't work, right? But what'll happen is the level will actually end up spawning like this, because the parts need to line up, right? So our code is going to line up the parts, and what is going to happen is the parts are going to line up like this, and the level is going to end up spawning like this, like midway. So what you need to do is you need to actually like orient the part correctly by like just doing that. And it needs to be like exactly oriented. If you need to rotate something by 90 degrees, then you can just do Control R. So what I'm gonna do here, if your code is the same as mine and it still doesn't work, then you should make sure that all your parts are oriented properly. Okay, guys, so I have my different levels here. And for each level, again, just to reiterate, I have one part here, and that's the part at the start is called start part. And then I have a part kind of hidden, and it's called end part. And again, you can make these parts transparent by changing its property. But these parts are just to orient these levels. All right. So now let's get to coding. So now let me move all of these levels back to server storage. And by the way, or sorry, level storage. And by the way, wherever they are in the workspace doesn't really matter because we're going to be cloning them and moving their position anyway. So let me just add these levels to level storage and let's get started on the code. So first, let's make a function that actually creates a level and adds it to a certain position whenever we call it. I'm going to call this function create random level. And this function, so for example, if the player is on level 0 and then they just open the door, and that we'll be coding that later, but let's say they open the door, the previous level number that would be passed in would be 0. And then it would be able to spawn a level, we would name it 1 in the script, and it would be spawned right here. Now what we need to do is we need to create a reference to this part because when we create a random level by using this function, we want to move that level to align with this end part. So let's create a reference to it by using a variable. We'll call it end part previous. And we'll just use we'll first go to the levels folder, find the child that goes with the previous level number, and then find end part. So actually we need to create a reference to um, the previous level by doing levels, find first child, to string, and then previous level number. And what we can do is we can say previous level, wait for child, or maybe yeah. I think we can just assume that the end part exists. And now we actually need to create a random level. So let's create this random level, and we will call it random level, and we're just gonna call the function on it by saying choose random level. And now here's the thing, right? How do you move a bunch of parts together, right? Well, that's when models come in. So models have a function called here. Let me show you guys real quickly. So I made this random variable here just to show you the autofill. Um, but models have a method called pivot2, which basically assuming that the model has something called a primary part, which is just a property, which I'll be explaining, we can actually give the pivot2 function a C frame, and it will actually set the primary part C frame to this C frame, and all of the parts will move correspondingly. So first off, right, these are folders, not models. What I recommend you guys do, if you want to keep it as a folder, then here you can just kind of like clone, or not clone, but you can take all of the children from these levels that are created here, and then you can just add it to a fake model. But what I recommend you guys do is probably just to first create these levels as folders and then later on switch them to models. So I'm just going to go ahead and switch these folders to models really quickly. So now random level is going to be a model, but we need to actually set its primary part. And we can just do that in the code itself, which is extremely easy. What we can do is just set its primary part to the start part. Why the start part? Well, let's see. Let's clone the model, put it to the workspace. And as we can see here, right, this start part is extremely easy to control its C frame, right? Because if we feed in the C frame into the random thing model pivot 2, if we feed in the C frame here and the primary part was start part, then the C frame of start part would just align to the C frame that we fed it. And of course, the C frame that we feed is actually just the C frame of this end part from the previous level right here. So what we can do is actually just give it the C frame, first of all, of the previous part. And before that, we actually need to set the primary part of the model to its start part. And we can just do that by saying random level dot start part and set its property like so. And then lastly, when everything's done, what we can do is just set its parent to the levels folder in the workspace. And we actually need to rename this level, and we're going to name it based on this previous level number variable. So we're going to name it the previous level number variable plus 1, so that it would be the next level. So now let's test this function out. What I'm gonna do here is I'm simply just gonna call the function on 0. So I'm gonna say create level random level and then 0. Also, guys, really quickly, make sure to anchor all of your parts in general, and very importantly, anchor all your start parts and end parts, because if those are not anchored, then your levels will just start randomly, kind of not really randomly spawning, but spawning without direction, kind of. And it works. So basically, the level just kind of randomly spawned right after level 0. So guys, I've written this code to randomly generate 4 levels, and as you can see, it just did that. It just randomly generated 4 levels out of the random levels that we have in our folder. But now you might be wondering, how do I actually create the doors? And you can see I haven't really explained this much, but I've left out the doors on purpose so that we can do it later. And what I'm going to be showing you guys how to do is how to create a detection system that actually kind of opens the doors and then spawns a new level whenever the door opens. So guys, I've added all these doors, and I've called them door part, exactly how you see here. So let's get to the scripting now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called attach door functionality. And what this is going to do is it's going to take in a level number, and it's going to basically just make the door work and actually create the new level after it. So first we actually have to create a variable to the door part, and actually I keep forgetting this, but before that we need to create the variable to the actual level, and we're going to assume that it's in the levels folder. So let's just go ahead and say find first child and then toString level number. Not too sure if we need this toString, but I'm going to put it anyways. And I'm going to say if not level, then I'm going to give a quick warning, because it should have been there. And I'm going to say door functionality. All right, so now we can create a reference to that door part by saying door part equals level dot door part. So I've stated before that we need to actually detect when the door opens. And the way we can do that is if we create this kind of part, and it should be kind of transparent, but for now I'll just make it like green and like semi-transparent almost. And if it was kind of like encompassing the door here, um, and so it was surrounding it so that any player that kind of touched it to open the door, um, any player that kind of touched it, then it would detect that, and then it would actually open this door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create these parts, and I'm going to name them door open part, and I'm going to add them all to their respective folders or models. So I've added all the door detection parts, so now let's just get to coding. First, I'm going to be creating a reference by using a variable, and I'm going to create a reference to this door open part. Door open part. Now, I want to check when this door open part has been touched, so I'm just going to use the door open part dot touched event connected to a function. Now, this function will take the hit part as a variable, which will be the part that actually touched the door open part whenever it got touched. Now we actually have to decide whether or not the hit part is a part of the player's character, so we can do this by creating some references. So the first reference we're going to make is to the character, and then we're going to make a reference to the humanoid object. And the humanoid object will be called humanoid, but also it will have class humanoid. So that's why we're using this colon and humanoid there. Or you can do this, which is what I prefer, where you use this other method, find first child of class. Now, if the humanoid is nil, so we can say not humanoid, then we'll just return it. So we just put that in an if statement. Now, just for the simplicity of the door, all I'm going to do when it's touched is just destroy it. But I recommend you add some tween service or some tweens to actually make the door go in and out. So what I can do is I can just say door part colon destroy to just get rid of it completely. Now I'm going to be showing you how to make it so that the door only acts one time, and we can use something called a debounce table. So essentially it's just a table that stores all of the players that have already opened the door. So if the door is touched and the player has already opened it, then it will just return. And before it's touched, we're actually just going to make the debounce table populated for that certain player. We still have to call the create random level function from before whenever the door is destroyed. So we can just go ahead and do that just like so. And for the level number, we're just going to put the level number that we have currently. So before we do anything more, let's create a function that actually starts the game whenever we call it. And all it's going to do is actually just attach the door functionality to the first door so that the door opens up and allows the player to actually play the game. Let's just go ahead and call this function. And we're still missing one piece in the attach door functionality function, and that's when we create a new level when the door open part is touched. We have to attach functionality to that new door. And keep in mind that the level number is not the same level number. It's actually going to be the next level number. So we do need to add 1 to that parameter right there. So guys, as you can see, the doors are working and they essentially just spawn a random level directly after the previous level every single time. And I can just keep going and they will keep spawning. If you guys want the full script, then the script is going to be in the description. So guys, although there are limitations to this basic script, it should do the job if you want to make some basic games out of it. So if this helps you out, feel free to subscribe. Thanks for watching.